Hey everybody, Dr. Shook here. I hope you're doing well today. What I want to share with you guys is leading up to our webinar. I want to share some things with you that I think are going to help you better understand why we need to address the toxins that are in our environment. As you guys know, I am constantly researching and I'm constantly trying to learn the latest science and stay abreast of the things that I think are impacting your thyroid physiology, your overall health, and really try to pull that into a clinical, something that we can use clinically. So what I want to share with you guys here is I want to really go into how toxins are destroying your thyroid. And if you haven't seen my whiteboard video, this is what it looks like, but that video is the one that it's been seen on Facebook over like 4.5 million times. It's really, this is how the thyroid works, starting at the brain, going to the thyroid gland, then how the hormone's made, and it hops on these little proteins that transport the thyroid hormone to the cells of your body. But most of this hormone has to be converted, the T4, into T3, different forms of T3, reverse T3, and then these other forms of T3, T3S and T3AC, they get converted in the digestive tract, but only in the presence of good bacteria. They hop a ride on these little transport proteins, which are in the blood, and they get carried to the cells, where it hops off of the transport protein, goes, if the cell's healthy, goes through the cell membrane, which is the outside, into the nucleus of the cell and attaches to your DNA, stimulating the cellular response, which we call a proteomic response, and sets your basal metabolic rate. If this does not occur, then you have all the problems and symptoms of hypothyroidism. And this can break down like 24 different ways. We talk about that in my video. This is not what this is intended to be. What I want to show you is the new science that came out last year. That's right, last year. This is why no one knows about this. Okay, I'm going to share this with you. And this is a lot of what we're going to be talking about on the webinar. Now, we know this breaks down 24 different ways, but I want to tell you what I came across. So I came across some research. This was in Hormone Research, Pediatric Hormone Research Journal, published in 2016, the impact of endocrine disruptors on the thyroid hormone system. Now, endocrine disruptors are chemicals in our environment that disrupt or break down our hormone signaling systems, okay? So this is something that we have to address. So let me share with you exactly how this research paper, what it showed us. And notice it says the impact of endocrine disruptors. So that's your thyroid hormone, and there's a lot more hormones, but in the body that are disrupted. But this in particular, they focused on thyroid hormone system, not just one aspect. So let me share with you guys what they said. They said that several chemicals are known to be thyroid hormone disrupting compounds that have been shown to interact with virtually all, they use the word all, elements of thyroid hormone homeostasis. That just means thyroid hormone physiology. Chemicals that can break this down. And we already talked about 24 ways that we know this could be disrupted, from the brain to your pituitary gland and making of TSH, to in the gland with Hashimoto's, with Graves' disease, with transport proteins, how they can be affected, how the liver can cause you to produce too much or not enough of these hormones. It can be liver dysfunction, it could be a bad gut, and it can be all these things where there's inflammation in the cell that makes you not sensitive to these hormones, to vitamin deficiencies, to all of these issues. We talked about 24 different ways. This is an entirely new layer of the problem, guys. And there's a lot of reasons that this hasn't been identified until now, okay? So one of the things that I want to share with you is, let's talk about some of the ways that they said specifically these hormones break down the system, okay? So what I'm going to do is, the real issue with this, I'll tell you what, the real issue with this is, in my opinion, is how this is really impacting this entire system. But the real issue is that we haven't, up until now, there's more and more evidence that this is creating problems. But still, up until just recently, we haven't had good ways to evaluate these chemicals, because you cannot check them in the blood very effectively unless it's an acute exposure. You can't check them in the urine unless someone can detoxify them well. There's so many problems with this, and we don't even know how to test for a lot of them. So a lot of these things are research based. So how does that apply to us? Well, what it tells us is we know it's a problem for everyone, but now we've got some tests and some things that we can do. But what I want to show you is, let me show you how this paper in particular showed how these chemicals can disrupt the system. So we know that there's all these pieces to the puzzle, right? So they said how it disrupts it is, number one, feedback mechanisms with this central structure in the brain. Remember, that's called the hypothalamus. So the hypothalamus produces a hormone that signals the pituitary. They say that it can disrupt this feedback mechanism with hypothalamus and the pituitary. They said they call it the hypothalamus pituitary axis. So I'm just going to draw X's where these chemicals, okay? So here, breaking the brain, the central structure of the brain from signaling your pituitary gland, which does what? Makes TSH. So if you're measuring TSH, but it's being broken down because of chemicals, then how can you reliably use TSH as a good indicator? Okay? So it breaks down that. Breaks down TSH synthesis. So what does that mean? It means the manufacturing. Where does that occur? In the pituitary. So let's just go ahead and put a big X here. This is exactly where this paper, which you can find on PubMed, shows us, and they say exactly this. Breaks down thyroid hormone synthesis. So it breaks it here. It breaks the thyroid hormone synthesis in the gland. So where's T4 and T3 made? It's made in the thyroid. Breaks the synthesis in the thyroid. It can disrupt it. Disrupts the thyroid hormone storage. See, your gland doesn't just produce it and dump it all out. No, it's stored in here. So it further, again, it disrupts the storage of thyroid hormone in the thyroid itself. Okay, so the transportation. It disrupts the thyroid hormones, the release from the thyroid gland. So it disrupts the production, it disrupts the storage, it disrupts the release. It can disrupt the transport protein binding. So this hormone, when your hormone's made, your T4 and T3 is made by the gland, it has to hitch a little ride on these things called thyroid binding globulins. They're in the bloodstream, they transport the thyroid hormone. So the T4 has to hitch a ride. The T3 has to bind to it and hitch a ride to the cell. So they're saying that the transport protein binding, so the sticking of this to the hormone can be, to the little binding protein, can be broken. Okay, so we're breaking it there. Okay, so then, and the thyroid hormone distribution, so this carries it, these binding proteins carry it, and then they hop off. The T3, for example, would hop off of this binding protein, and it's free T3 at that point, and it goes into the cell, right? Well, they're saying that the thyroid hormone distribution in the tissues and organs is disrupted. So the hormone may become free, but it's not able to be distributed into the tissues. So we're talking about breaking it here. Okay, further than that, as if there's not more, it can also disrupt the cellular thyroid hormone uptake. So the distribution in the tissues, we're going to look at these as the same way. But the cell cannot take it up. It's disrupting and breaking the cell's ability to take it up. The intracellular thyroid hormone metabolism. So your cells can't process it even if it's in here. So we'll just put an X in the cell, thyroid hormone metabolism, and thyroid hormone receptor binding. So the receptors, guys, there's this entire process is being disrupted. Everywhere that these binding proteins are involved, the manufacturing in the brain, this is all being disrupted. And we know that there are chemicals in our environment that alter our gut bacteria that would affect the conversion of T3 sulfate and T3 acetic acid in the liver from being converted into T3. Like you have to have good biota or good bacteria. We know the environmental chemicals are disrupting that. So that could disrupt this. Okay, so how about inside the liver? Chemicals, your liver is primarily one of the things that's going to be responsible for clearing chemicals out. So if you put stress on the liver, you can be affecting this. So can you see how this entire physiology, with this new information we have, these chemicals in our environment can be disrupting this entire physiological process, resulting in not having a cellular response, so you have all the symptoms of low thyroid hormone, and decreased basal metabolic rate. So your cellular metabolism and the function of every single cell in every organ, in every tissue can be disrupted. Not to mention the things that we commonly think about, like brain fog, slow metabolism, and low energy. All of these things could be coming from chemicals, and it's not even being talked about. Now, why do you think that is? Well, number one, because this was in 2016 that this paper came out. Now there are hundreds, and I mean hundreds, 602 as of yesterday, papers on PubMed, which is where it's peer-reviewed indexed medical literature, with the words endocrine disruptors thyroid came up. 602. But this, 2016, was one of the best papers I found because it directly ties in all of these things that I've been teaching you guys and shows you that, you know what? Not to mention that this physiology can break down, but the chemicals can disrupt every bit of it. So what this has done is this has changed everything. This is one of the first things that I'm starting with a lot of people. Okay, so what I want to let you guys know is I wanted to teach you and share with you this information before the webinar. I wanted to give you guys some really great and exciting information to look into. And what I want you to do is I want you to watch your email for tomorrow, because what I'm going to do is I'm going to send you guys another video. I'm going to send you guys a few videos prior to our webinar where I really want to give you guys some homework. I want you to see this in advance of the webinar because we're going to be talking about things on the webinar that I'm not going to go into with as much detail here. We're not going to be drawing this over. This is not going to be in the webinar. So I want to give you guys some homework and some things to study and some things to be exposed to and understand prior to the webinar. Because what I'm going to do is I'm going to send you another video on what we have to do. The next video that's coming up, which I'll send you an email, so it should be in the next day or two. But keep your eyes out for the email because you're not going to be able to get the video any other way. I'll send you an email where we're going to talk about what do we have to do to get these chemicals out of the body. Okay? So guys, I appreciate you hanging out with me, and I'm super excited for you to learn this material. Like I said, we're staying on the cutting edge. This was just last year. It was published. So many of your doctors, they have no idea that this is occurring. So that's why, I'm always trying to educate you guys. I'm constantly researching. I'm constantly doing things. And that's one of the reasons that we're going to be doing something completely different that I'm going to be sharing with you guys on the webinar. So I'm super excited for you guys because this is completely, for me, this is absolutely practice changing. This is life changing information that you guys need to be aware of. Because guess how many chemicals there are in the environment? 800,000 environmental and industrial chemicals in our environment that are disrupting our physiology, many of which we still have no clue about. There's been no research done. This is what I'm going to teach you guys, all right? I'm going to teach you guys what we have to do. So I appreciate you guys. I will see you on the next video. Make sure you watch your email because we're going to talk about next video, what we need to do. And this is all homework before the webinar. So I look forward to seeing you guys there. Hope you have a great day.